All right, greetings everyone. It is very late slash early, depending on your perspective here in Japan, but we are going to be doing a preview of the new Astrius, whether or not he's any good. So we're going to be playing against the Dark Elemental team because we got barriers here, we got fairly good just built team and everything like that. So it gives us a good general idea. Before we get into any of the other stuff, of course, I'll be doing more tests throughout the week to figure out whether or not I'm super happy with this new character. Just gonna make that one change real quickly. But this, the new Astrius, who is ironically the old Astrius. So here you can kind of see what his stats generally look at. I'll let you pause it if you want to take a look here. We'll be doing more of an actual look later on once we have the Wotv calc data. But you can get a general early idea for what his resistances are, what his strengths are, and what his power level will be. If we just take a look over here, we can also example of lightning stats in the current party, and of course the queen of DPS lately, Bridal Raya. So this gives you an idea. He's got a lot of interesting abilities, including barriers, ignoring fatal damage. He has protection, preemptive attacks, AoEs of different shapes. He has slashing resistance down, including on his sword, which has slash resistance down and human killer on it. He's looking like a very good defensive and offensive. But, of course, we don't really know anything until we test it out, so let's test it out. Now, whether or not he's going to be any good, again, please just a reminder at the start of this video to give us a little bit more time, and I guess I'm using the royal us sense, because there's only me here, but let's just get into this. We'll start off just doing a little bit of buffing. We want barriers active because it's going to be an idea for how good he actually is. We're going to get Alaya over here doing her thing. And lightning also we got in here, which is great. Because, you know, we just got so many barriers to out against. And last but not least, we'll get Raph. And yeah, Raph is starting to show a little bit of age, but we're not going to hold that against her. We're going to just test it out, isn't it? Alright, so we have all of this stuff. Here is new Astrius. We're not running any of his buffs yet. Take a look at this guy and see what his general stats look like early on in a match. You can see that this one's built with a fair amount of single target resistance and not too terribly much AoE resistance, which is kind of interesting because, you know, mostly it feels like lately what we're doing is always AoE. So let's take a look at a few of his different attacks. Here we can see the classic, yes, it's the classic Astrius ability of the cross pattern, which is very much a unique thing to him only. And as you can see, even with the amount of barriers that we have active between all of these characters, we are dishing out a lot of damage, even more so if the enemy has no barriers, like in the case of Majina. Let's take a look at this ability. This is, of course, his barrier breaker, which, as you can see, can be really detrimental to the opponent. This is one of the things that Lightning top DPS has been missing for a while, and I think is one of the main reasons why you essentially want this character, because you can remove barrier removal. You can also just deal a fairly heavy amount of damage. And taking a look at some of his other abilities, here you can see how much like that barrier is kind of reducing. We are getting slash resistance down here and a double hitter, but at the same time, Sephiroth is still surviving pretty well because of the barrier. Now next up, this is one of his sub-job abilities. Essentially, We're looking at an AoE ability. We're looking at 3-turn down speed and attack. And it's in a really interesting pattern around him that I don't think is going to be super good, but depends on positioning, AI, and how strong he can be driving. Next up, we have this AoE. If we just take a look here, you can kind of get an idea for how much damage we're doing. Again, certain characters are pretty resilient, but other characters not so much. And again, removing that barrier removal I think is going to be super important. And one thing I would like to mention, this character I think has a ton of potential because of the new wave battle armor, which is incredibly high tier and will end up just giving this guy a lot of defensive capability. All right, next up, this one I think is also pretty interesting. As you can see, it's actually a select target one, which are always, just generally pretty strong. And the interesting effect that this one has on top of it, and I'm sure I'm missing a few details, so again, bear with me, this is early on. But this, as he actually receives more and more damage, this character attack, this specific attack actually gets stronger, which I think is incredibly valuable. So now let's take a look at some other stuff. We have his TMR, which gives AP recovery, gives bravery up, it gives resistances to certain status effects, and it gives slash attack up. So overall, pretty strong, I'll have you say. From the beginning of battle, he actually has his barrier automatically active as it's on his support skill, which is pretty darn good. Boy, there's so many things to talk about. I'm getting a few. I'm just going to use quick translation to make sure that I'm not missing anything. Shell effect that increases water attribute resistance on allies for 3 turns, reduces magic damage taken by himself, so pretty good into mage matchups. Next up, this one I think a lot of people are going to be happy about. Regen effect for 3 turns on himself, even if you receive lethal damage. Additional effects, if you are under the ignore fatal attack, AP consumption will be reduced and magic damage will also be reduced. And our last ability that we're going to talk about here is Crystal Protection, which increase the speed and single attack resistance of allies within range around you for 3 turns, and gives you the effect that removes the guts Immortal Spirit, ignore fatal damage, before for 3 turns, and gives you a chance to reduce damage when taking damage from a physical attack. So comprehensively, I think Astrius is basically the full package. And we're just going to start running first off this one because we're getting the regen status effect, we're getting the AP cost down so we can do other things. Let's just see here. And starting in a sec, we'll also take a few swings at it. So first off, very strong attack from Bridal for Limit Burst. For other attacks, you can see that he's actually pretty good into the mirror and receive just like preventing a bunch of damage. But here you'll also notice his preemptive counter, which has an incredibly high chance of activating. Not only that, but is dealing pretty much as good as it gets, which I think is just really strong. Let's just park that there for a second. We'll try Lightning's attack just to see, again, basically giving us good. Yeah, we're getting a little bit better here, just for the simple fact that Astrius counter chance here is lower than on Bridal Alaya, but still you'll see that the damage I think is overall pretty well reduced. Now before we'll take a look at just magical damage. As you can see, not the best source, but it gives us an idea for how much he's getting there. We're getting about 1000 HP regeneration per turn, and would be higher if we actually, get some, more TMR runes for HP, which I think is actually decent on him preemptively. Now, taking a look, we also have access to limit burst now so we can get a look. Very high chance of poison being. In fact, this also gives Astrius the other effect of being able to give a secondary hit, which is why we're just seeing so much damage here. But the poison status effect, pretty high chance of activating on most characters. Really nice. Alright, so next let's run this Crystal Protection, which is giving us even more defensive capability. We are going to take some pain here. We're going to let Majin Bina now take a few. Now again, if you remember, this character was a character that at the start, we didn't really have any spirit protection at all. We were looking at spirit protection of, or spirit stat of only 5, which most people will tell you is crap. But here we are, we're taking a look. First off, that limit burst of Majin Bina not doing too terribly much, which basically paints this character as being an anti-soul unit. And Soul kind of put a really heavy kibosh on Bridal Aya. This seems to be a total reversal, or at least from what we're seeing so far. As you can see, for a unit that is essentially built to be an anti-physical base unit, he's kind of doing pretty good just reducing any magical damage. Well, which I don't think I need to tell you, pretty nice. We'll just run this for a second here. We'll get this guy over here. Try and deal some damage to him. Again, we're looking at a 2000 from Sephiroth's Limit Burst, which is just not that impressive overall. But then you look at the fact that he's actually potentially taking 5,000 points on Retaliation, and good God, that looks really, really painful. Other attacks from Sephiroth just don't seem to actually come mustard, and while I agree trying Bradley will be a much tougher matchup for this character, it does go to show very early on just how potentially strong this new character is, and good. Now this one attack here is an AoE attack, dealing just generally more damage here, but I'd still say that we're coming out pretty even, and if Sephiroth's already taken damage, a good chance that he's just going to get hit first from the preemptive. Keeps him very much alive and in. So let's just skip ahead. We're not even going to bother with that one. And let's get back over. Now we've generated 71 AP so far, which is pretty nice. If we look into here, we can see some of the other attacks. I guess it wouldn't be too terrible if we ended up getting some damage, because we kind of want to see some of his other abilities. We'll run his TMR skill because I am curious about just how much. 10 AP, pretty decent off of a TMR. Pretty nice. We're getting slash attack up. Good stuff. And hopefully these guys are going to be able to do some... Oh boy. Alright, well, Sephiroth, I need you, buddy, to do some stuff. Getting preemptive, barely attacked. Again, that is partially because of the barrier that is active. We got to be a little bit careful that we're not just going to get murdered. I will note that his counter doesn't work against magic attacks, but that's really not too terribly much of a valid, what feels like a really valid. Here, a shooting attack. Now this is one resistance. It seems quite low, and honestly might be your best bet for countering this character, which basically means felony. But we don't want to hurt him too much. A little bit of damage. Oh, fair bit of damage. But we're gonna get that, see that HP effect here. Oh, this is gonna be really embarrassing if I actually guys. Alright, we're fine. So now let's just come in here. We're going to take a quick peek, make sure that we have the HP one. And let's see where this ends up being. Now, personally, might need to rewind, but I do remember it was about 5,000 damage before. Now we're looking at about 7,300, which is about a 40% increase in attack, which still seems really decent for what we're getting. Seems pretty nice. Anything particularly else? We'll show his limit burst out of here. So let's give it a shot. Get that secondary effect in. And I think now we're just going to let our units have some fun. Now, interestingly, a few other things to note. Astrius does have an actual speed support skill, which does allow him to potentially just get a bunch extra agility and movement if you want to build him that way. Interestingly, he does have a support skill that improves his crystal passive. Without the Wotv calc data, it's almost impossible to know generally how good this is, but from what I've seen so far, this character seems really strong, like the thing that Squall should have been. Very just capable of against every damage type that's out there, except maybe shooting. But even that doesn't feel like a thing for me to say that he is remotely bad, because in the case that you just can't handle everything that this character has, well, you kind of just win. Barriers, anti-magical damage, and physical damage, access to heavy armor, including human killer / resistant penetration. It all just is generally there and could be just even more improved with the new VC that's going to show next week. I think that new Astrius is at least as of this video, a really incredibly strong unit that will be something that I think a lot of people will be very happy to get, especially lightning-based people. So let's just take a look really quickly one more time at PMR stats. Show them early on, the ability on it, which makes it just nice. And here is the and one more time. So yeah, I'm thinking that this guy is going to be a positive. Whether or not he's really going to make Squall any better, that probably will need to be tested for another day. But in the meantime, Lightning's probably going to be continuing its, how do I say this? Its moment on top. If for no other reason than I think this character really counters the one thing that was pushing Lightning down, which is Soul. So thank you so much for watching. I think I mentioned everything, barrier removal, all of that stuff, but more later. Thanks for watching.